HB 56 was passed by our legislature in Alabama with several leaders kind of leading the pack and talking about the need to empty the clip on immigration. And those were the words that Scott Beeson, the main proponent of the bill, used, that he was going to empty the clip. Mo Brooks, a congressman from Alabama, said he would do everything but shoot him. Scott Beeson is a state senator also known for having been taped while he was wearing a wire for the government, in which he referred to African Americans as aborigines. There's a kind of rhetorical violence that has been part of the discussion in Alabama as the bill was proposed and since it has been passed. And that has manifested in many ways in the real world. We'll say that during the legislative process, during the session, some of the real heroes of that process were the Legislative Black Caucus, who know what racism looks like in Alabama and who were very, very strong opponents of the bill. We know that the bill was drafted in part by a man named Chris Kobach, who told us that he drafted it on his laptop while sitting in a turkey blind hunting. Chris Kobach is part of a nativist movement. He's with the Immigration Reform Law Institute, which is an arm of the Federation of American Immigration Reform called FAIR, which the Southern Poverty Law Center has designated as a hate group. The law is still in effect, and that's the message that I want you all to hear today. There's been much talk about provisions that have been enjoined by the district court, some provisions that have been enjoined by the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals. But this is a comprehensive law that was designed by its drafters to affect every aspect of an immigrant's life, and it has done so. And the damage is extreme. What it has done is it has made government at every level inaccessible to undocumented immigrants and many documented immigrants. They can't walk into court and probate a will. They can't register their mobile home. They can't get a birth certificate or a death certificate for a family member. They cannot go to court for anything. Some of the sections that remain in effect are Section 12, which is a section that is essentially identical to the Arizona law that was much discussed and so controversial and quickly enjoined by the district court there. And Sections 27 and 30, which are provisions that make contracts for undocumented people unenforceable and make business transactions between undocumented persons and the government illegal. And that has been interpreted in the broadest possible way. So I'd just like to talk to you a little bit about what this looks like in the real world. We, along with our co-counsel, created a hotline in the aftermath of the court ruling allowing HB 56 to stand. In the first weekend, we received 1,000 phone calls. Several weeks since then, we've received 3,000 phone calls. And they're everything from the ridiculous to the disastrous. So just a kind of sample of what we've heard. We know that a woman went to court in one of our counties to obtain a protective order on the issue of domestic violence, and she was told by the judge himself that she would be reported to ICE if she proceeded with the action. Another judge told a lawyer that the lawyer had an obligation to report her own client's undocumented immigration status. He also said that he believed that anyone who asked for an interpreter was a red flag, and that he'd have to ask that person about their immigration status. A mother in northern Alabama was told she could not attend a book fair at her child's school without an Alabama-issued state ID, which of course undocumented persons cannot obtain. A clerk in Bessemer told a Latino man that he could not make a purchase with a bank card because he did not have an Alabama state ID or driver's license. This Latino man was documented and from Ohio, but did not have an Alabama state-issued ID. By the first Monday after HB 56 was allowed to take effect, 2,285 Latino students were absent from schools across Alabama, about 7% of the total Latino school population. Many have since withdrawn. And the damage, I would suggest, for those children is done. Regardless of the fact the 11th Circuit enjoined Provision 28, which affects school children, children have been sent the powerful message that they are not wanted in our state. And the calls we receive now are from families who say that their children are bullied in school by teachers, by administrators, and by other students who say that they don't belong there and should go home. A public school in my city, Montgomery, asked already enrolled Latino students questions about the immigration status and that of their parents. As a result, some of the parents are keeping their kids out of school. In Allgood, the Water Authority posted a sign indicating that water customers would have to produce identification documents proving their immigration status in order to maintain their water service. The Montgomery Probate Office published a notice indicating it will not provide any services to anyone without proof of immigration status. As a result, many immigrants are not able to obtain a birth certificate for their U.S. citizen children. We've received calls from a father, a prospective father, husband, who was worried about his 9-month pregnant wife and wanted to figure out how to drive her to Florida so she could give birth, but was unwilling to go to a hospital in Alabama for fear that she'd be turned in. Received many calls from people with sick family members who will not go to the hospital, and I will say that there is no doubt that people will die as a result of this law. An apartment complex manager in Hoover told residents that they could not renew their leases without proof of immigration status. Alabama Power told the family they would not have electricity without proof of immigration status. The family left the state. This law has released the racist vigilante in many of folks who probably were already predisposed to have such a racist vigilante. Now what we see is people showing up at work sites, construction work sites. We had a call from 3 men who said that a bunch of white guys in a pickup truck showed up with guns and said, "If you're here tomorrow, we'll kill you." Our advice to them was that it would be extremely dangerous for them to call the police and report this crime. We did suggest that they could call the FBI, but calling the police is, in our view, a dangerous practice. Saddens me deeply because I have lived in Alabama for many years and I know the people to be a generous and decent people in many ways. Harkens back to the darkest time of our history, and many people are disturbed by this and recognize this. We've been very successful in recent years in luring international businesses like Mercedes and Hyundai to do business in Alabama. And this, I suggest, is a large step back in those kinds of efforts. But my warning is that this is coming soon to a state near you, and you just don't want it. In 20 years as a civil rights lawyer, I have never grappled with a humanitarian crisis of this dimension. To carry out an assault, and it is an assault on immigrants, on the backs of school children, causes one to wonder, as one Alabama paper wrote, what kind of people have we become? So I'm here, as many Southerners have come to Washington, D.C. before me, pleading for response by the federal government to a misguided state government, which has now made its new stand in the schoolhouse door, denying access to education to school children who are legally entitled to receive it. And in that spirit, I come to Congress and I ask them to take steps to enact comprehensive immigration reform, which is the answer to this problem. And I'd also ask in the short term that the Department of Homeland Security look closely at what is happening in Alabama and ICE to take the action to say that we are not going to deport people who are picked up and detained as a result of this unconstitutional law. The Department of Justice has bravely filed its own suit in this action, has stood up and has said that this law is unconstitutional, and it would be wrong, both legally and morally, to rip families apart and destroy lives by sending people to other countries because of this hateful and racist law. Thank you.